give it to Damon and
Yeah,
have
it's in the judge.
the attorneys have a copy.
They are.
But, so I guess we need.
And for everybody in the courtroom, I want to thank you for the way you conducted yourself yesterday afternoon or yesterday evening when the jury was reading the verdict. I know it was emotionally a charged situation, and I do appreciate your efforts to conduct yourself in a proper manner in front of the jury, and I certainly respect and appreciate all that. You know what to do, Steve?
Do you know what, I think Jay may be coming around.
Hey, Steve, tell him Como had it, said all they had to do was plug it into HDMI one.
Right, I'm trying to see what else we had to do.
punishment phase of this trial, and except for jury selection, obviously, it's pretty much procedurally will be the same as the regular trial was. So there will be opening statements, some evidentiary testimony presented to you, this type of thing, and some closing arguments, and I'll charge you on the law as it relates to the punishment phase. All right? So, may proceed.
Trying to say will not have any opening statement
Oh,
as
okay.
such, because the nature of this part of the hearing, but we would, to put on the record, I think procedurally, is that at this point in the trial, the state is relying upon two aggravating circumstances. Number one, the defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to two or more persons other than the victim murdered during the act of murder. And two, the defendant committed mass murder, which is defined as the murder of three or more persons, whether committed during a single criminal episode or at different times within a 48-month period, and would ask the jury to consider as part of the proof in this case the evidence that was presented during the guilt-innocence phase of the trial. And with the court's approval, we would now ask to be allowed to call victim impact witnesses.
Good morning. I want to start by saying that although we disagree with your verdict, we fully respect your decision and appreciate the work y'all put into this case to this point. We just see things a little differently, but we nevertheless respect what you've done and appreciate the work that you've put in on this. Now we're going to a different phase in this case, and you're going to have a choice. You're going to have a choice between two options, and those options deal with what's going to happen with Travis Reinking from this point forward. One of the choices that you're going to have is to sentence him to life imprisonment with the possibility of release at some point. You may or may not have been aware of this at this point, and the jury instruction will say this, but that decision means life imprisonment with the possibility of release after serving 51 calendar years in prison. So what you've done by your verdict is, at a minimum, you've already sentenced him to a minimum of 51 calendar years in prison. At his age, you can ask yourself, do you think he'll ever make it out, even if he had that opportunity for parole? So one decision you have is, do we sentence him to life in prison with the possibility of release after 51 calendar years, or do we just say life in prison without the possibility of parole? That's the two decisions, the two choices. In factoring in what your decision should be, as the state said, 1/2 of the scale is the aggravating circumstances that they believe they have proven in this case. On the other hand, we have what are called mitigating circumstances. Now, the proof that you can consider in the aggravating circumstances and the mitigating circumstances can come from whatever you see today, and can also come from whatever you saw in the trial itself. So we don't have to come in here and put on more evidence. And I'll tell you right now that we're going to be relying on all the mental health proof that we put on in the trial. You would consider that just as if we spent 2 days doing the same thing again. So anything that you have heard, seen, observed, that from the beginning of this trial up and through today, you can consider in determining whether or not an aggravating circumstance or a mitigating circumstance applies in this case. We believe that when you weigh that evidence, you're going to find 5 mitigating factors. They mentioned the 2 that they believe they have proven. We're going to mention the 5 that we believe we have proven. Those 5 that we believe we have proven are: the defendant has no significant history of criminal activity. You've heard about an arrest, and that would be prior to this incident, but you've heard about the arrest in D.C. for what he did there. But we think that applies in this case. The next mitigating factor was the murder was committed while the defendant was under the influence of extreme mental or emotional disturbance. I think that's as clear and absolute as it could possibly be. The murder was committed under circumstances what the defendant reasonably believed to provide a moral justification for the defendant's conduct. He believed that moral justification. The capacity of the defendant to appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct or to conform his conduct to the requirements of the law was substantially impaired as a result of mental disease or defect or intoxication, which was insufficient to establish a defense to the crime, but what substantially affected his judgment. These four that I've read so far, there's a fifth one, but these four come from our statutes that said these are the legislature believes that these are statutory mitigating factors that you can consider. We no longer have a burden of proof to prove these by clear and convincing evidence. In fact, you can find this on your own. We don't have the burden of proof on that. You can find this on your own. And so those things basically in a nutshell means that although you apparently didn't believe that our mental health proof was enough to rise to a defense, it certainly can be enough to sentence him to life with the possibility of parole after serving 51 years, as opposed to life without the possibility of parole. The fifth mitigating factor is any other mitigating factor which is raised by the evidence produced by either the prosecution or the defense at either the guilt or sentencing hearing. That is, you shall consider any aspect of the defendant's character or record or any aspect or circumstance of the offense favorable to the defendant which is supported by the evidence. That means anything else that you individually find to be mitigating in this case. Some of you may find some of the mitigating factors exist. Some of you may disagree. When it comes time to weigh these, some of you may give great weight to some of these. You may give great weight to his mental health situation in determining what the punishment would be. Some of you may not be as moved by a particular mitigating evidence. But what's happening here is the 12 of you are basically making your own individual decision as to weighing out the statutory aggravators and mitigators and deciding for yourself, should Travis be punished by being sentenced to life imprisonment after serving 51 calendar years in the Tennessee Department of Corrections, or do we need to up that to just say life without parole? And each of you make your own individual decision with that. So after you hear the proof today, and at the end of this sentencing hearing, you can consider everything you've heard from last Monday morning all the way through today. You can look at the statutory aggravating circumstances, look at the mitigating circumstances that will be in here, and each of you individually get to weigh your decision as to what is his punishment from this day forward. And obviously, we are asking you to sentence him to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after serving 51 calendar years in prison. Thank you.
Go ahead, first one.
Your Honor, the state calls Patricia Perez.
You solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Perez. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Patricia Perez?
And you are the mother of Joe Perez Jr., is that right?
Yes, I am.
And how many children do you have?
I have 3. Three sons, Cruz Perez, Christian Perez, and Joey Perez.
And how old are your other sons?
Cruz is 31, Christian is 29, and Joey is, would have been 24.
He would have been 24 this year, right?
Yes.
So he was the youngest of your three sons, is that
Yes.
right?
He was my baby.
And can you describe, back in 2018, I know that you previously testified that your son Joey had just moved to the Nashville area.
Because he had, we were all planning to make the move. He came first to help his brother. And, yeah.
And so Joey moved here to help his brother with a business.
With the business, he had been here. I drove him here in December. We got here on December 22nd of 2017. Is his first day of residence here in Nashville.
And Ms. Perez, can you describe the emotional and physical and psychological and financial impact that your family has suffered since your son Joe Perez Jr. was murdered on April 22nd, 2018?
Our lives were completely destroyed. My son Christian moved home, closed his business because he could no longer stay here in Nashville. I've always been somebody that they say is unbreakable, because no matter what our family has been through, I will always be the one to bring our family up. This has broken me. Not just my spirit, not just my family, but also my mind. It has been hard for me to get up every day and to go on and to think. I wake up every day with just a little bit of hope that everything that has happened is a dream, and that I'll wake up and everything will be fine. But it isn't. And he truly is gone and no longer here. This man took away my future grandchildren. He took away an uncle to my granddaughters and to any other future grandchildren that I may have. There's one thing that I want to say is, like I said, this has broken me mentally. And I'm ashamed to say that I was in a hospital. And on that day, I fell asleep, screaming into a pillow. When I awoke with a baby in my arms. And I couldn't understand where the baby had come from. And the baby was a little girl. about a year old. And I just kept looking at her. And then I heard Joey's voice. Joey told me, "Mommy, do you have my puppy?" And I opened the door, and he's standing there. And he's like, "Mommy, you do have Poppy." And he gives me a kiss. And he takes that baby from my arms. And he says, "Here's my Poppin." And he's there. He's married. And he has a baby. And I realized that is the life that man stole from me. That is my son's life he took. He took that away. He took that from me. I will never see that baby. I will never see my son again. Because of your actions. Because of what he did.
Ms. Perez, do you want to take a moment?
Yeah.
Ms. Perez, can you describe the impact that this has had on your sons, Cruz and Christian?
My son Christian blames himself for bringing his brother to Nashville. He thinks that if he would have waited like I asked, that none of this would have happened. My son Cruz doesn't talk about it, doesn't want to hear about it. But a good thing came from it because he got certified as an EMT and he is going to school for paramedics training. And he said with every life that he saves is in dedication to or in dedication for his brother, since his brother's life could not be saved. And that's pretty much it.
And Ms. Perez, the photograph that's on the screen, that's your son, Joe Perez Jr., that your family calls Joey, that you've just testified about.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. I don't have any other questions.
No question. Thank you, Ms. Perez. Go ahead, next one.
Your Honor, the state's next witness is Joe Perez Sr.
So if you would raise your right hand and be sworn, please.
You solemnly swear to affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Mr. Perez, could you please state your full name for the record?
Joe Perez Sr.
And are you the father of Joe Perez Jr.?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Perez, can you please describe the financial, emotional, psychological, or physical effect that your son's murder has had on you and your family?
wife said, you know, it just devastated our family. April 22nd, you know, it was the worst day of our lives. 2018. And I didn't think it could get any worse, you know, than that. And being here again, it's just brought everything back again. So we have to pick up the pieces again and start over.
Mr. Perez, can you describe what you've seen your wife go through over the last 4 years?
She's gone through a lot of pain. She really has. I've been there with her all the time. She's been, like she said, in the hospital a couple of times, not just once. And I've been, you know, it's been hard on myself also, you know, trying to keep everything afloat while she's getting help, and it's been really mentally strainful for me. And you know, I try not to show, to keep my other two sons, you know, strong, so they don't see me break down.
Is that easy for you to do?
Not at all.
What about your sons, Cruz and Christian? What have you seen them experience?
Like Cruz, my wife said, Cruz, just Cruz. He's like me. He tries to be strong. And he has his moments. Christian, on the other hand, you know, like my wife said, he blames himself every time. I've had to consult him many times, telling him, son, it wasn't your fault. He calls me, crying, apologizing for bringing Joey over here. I tell him it's not your fault, son. I said someone else took your brother. It wasn't you. He says he should have been there for him. I said, wasn't your fault, son.
Mr. Perez, was there any other effect that you wanted to testify to today?
Yeah, you know, I miss my son, Joey. You know, he always, I said, he always tell me, Dad, I need you to make some barbecue, you know. He loved my barbecue. You know, it's something wrong with this car. I said, Dad, you need to fix my car. I said, I'll take care of it. You know, we're a close-knit family. We never turn our backs on, you know, on our kids. We never tell our kids you need to leave the house. Never. We'd rather have them at the house with us, no matter how old they are. But, you know, they have to live their own lives and do their own thing. But they know they always got a home if they ever need to come back home.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. You may sit down. Join us, sir.
Blanche Anderson.
If you would raise your right hand and be sworn, please.
solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Once again, can you tell us your name?
Blanche Anderson.
And Ms. Anderson, you testified briefly in the first part of the trial. I'm going to ask you some more questions now in depth about the young man whose picture is on the screen. Tell us again, who is that?
That's Torian Sanderlin, my nephew.
And approximately how old was he when that picture was taken?
He was probably 25. May have been 26, somewhere around there.
He has a big smile on his face.
Yes, beautiful smile,
Were you close to your nephew?
very close. He he never greeted me without coming and giving me a big hug, said, "Hey, Auntie," and Blanche.
Have you been essentially involved in his life since he was born?
Since he was born. Me and my sister are close, so when she was pregnant, I was always in touch with her. The day she gave birth, I drove down and I spent 2 weeks with them, and I took care of Torian.
And what is your sister's name?
Wanda Sanderlin. If she would stand
And
up,
well, I was going to ask that. And who is her husband?
Charles Sanderlin. They are both overwhelmed. They can't speak. They asked me to do it. I'm doing my best.
That's what I was going to ask. And with the court's permission, could they stand?
I would appreciate if they would,
They may.
so they could see them. Thank you.
And since the murder of Torian Sanderlin on April the 22nd, 2018, have you remained in touch with your sister and brother-in-law?
Every day. Yes.
When did you first learn of Torian's passing?
The morning of, my son called, and he was frantic. "Mom, I need your help." And I thought, "What's going on?" He said, "Torian's been shot." I thought, he haven't been shot? He said, "Yes." And I didn't know. He said, "I need your help." I said, "Okay, give me time." I said, "I'm gonna call the police station. Let me see if I can find out what happened." I couldn't get through to the police station, so I started calling the hospitals. And because of the tragicness of it, they said they couldn't give it to me over the phone. Someone had to come down with identification. My son couldn't do it. I had to call Wanda. I said, "You guys got to go down. Torian's been shot."
So were you the person who relayed that information to them?
Yes.
Knowing what has occurred and what had occurred through the days and the months and now years since then, have you seen the impact of what this has done to Torian's mother and father? And if so, could you describe that?
For them, Wanda has been she's still under doctor's care. She has had so much stress. She breaks out in all these big whips over her body. The doctor said it's stressing her nerves. They got her on so much medication trying to control it. And I think she's still experiencing it. It's so hard to see when she calls and tells me what's going on and to see it. And I know for myself, I can't sleep. Anytime I would go to sleep, I would dream about Tori. I would dream we were talking and we would do things together, and I wake up sometime crying. So I quit going to sleep. I couldn't sleep. And even today, I can't sleep because when I go, I think of him. And I know if I do it, I know she's doing it. And she said, nobody understands. I tell her, I do, because I was just as close. But I know he wasn't my son, but he was my nephew, and I was very close with him. He lived with me for 2 years. He was like a big brother to my son.
What has it been like that you've seen for both his mother and his father, you and your son, that Torian is no longer alive?
When we have family gatherings, Wanda's there, but she's not there. Because all she sees is Tori's not there. My son's there, my sister's son's there, my brother's family, all our family's there, but she don't see Tori. So she's there, but she's not there.
Sounds like you might be describing a family reunion.
Right.
Oh, and are those
We
yearly
try to have
events?
those once a year. As a family, we try to get together. And it's just not the same because she's not there.
At those reunions prior to his murder, would Torian be there?
Tori, like I say, Torian loved to cook. He would always man the grill. He would take care of the best food you could eat. He loved cooking. And I like to say, I have a grandson. Tori lived with him. And he was only 4 when it happened. He went to school. And when he would come home, I always talked to him, what happened at school? And he told me, Mom, someone died. I said, why would you say that? They took her away and she didn't come back. They were outside playing and the little girl got hurt. So her parents took her home. And he thought she was dead. So I said, baby, are you sure? He said, yeah, Mama, they took her. He called me Mom. I said, no. I said, she just got hurt. She will be back tomorrow. I had to reassure him. And the next day she did show back up and I said, did she show up? He said, yeah, I thought I told you she wasn't dead. But he associates when he don't see you for a while that you're dead.
And so even on down to someone that young in the family.
Yes, because him and Tori, they had a good relationship. I'll let my son tell you about their relationship.
And did your sister and your brother-in-law have any other children?
They have one other son, and he would be here today, but he's out of the country. So my son will be speaking for him, but they have one other son, the youngest son. Tori was the oldest.
Mr. Sonderland, Torian's father. No, he's a quiet person.
Yes.
But have you seen what this has done to him?
Yes, I have. I hate to say it, but he's drinking more. He kind of tried to be strong for Wanda and not say too much, but it had a toll on him. He's not the same. Wanda would never be the same. He's not the same. Wanda was so warm and open, and you could just have a good time with her. Now she's short with you. She don't have the patience. She's suspicious of everything. She don't go nowhere no more. She's just afraid. Nobody can be behind her when we out. Well, I said, it's okay. We okay. But she just.
Now we have that picture of Torian.
Yes.
Did you bring another one today?
I sure did. We brought one.
If I could ask this be passed, council has seen it. Ms. Anderson, know you brought that today, and I just want to do the process right. So
Right.
are those pictures of Torian in various stages of his life?
Yes, it is.
I would ask that be admitted as an X numbered exhibit and be allowed to publish it on the overhead. And Ms. Anderson, that screen in front of you is sort of a little magic with it, that if you touch the screen, it will make a mark on it. So let's just start down, actually, let's start down there and work our way back around. Who is,
Oh, that's Wanda.
okay,
That's his mother.
and let you just touch the pictures as we go around until they've all been marked.
Okay. That's Tari.
Okay, about what age?
He's probably 2 there. Oh, I'm supposed to be continuing. I'm
Yes, I
sorry.
was just saying, yeah,
I
just,
started
just
there.
yeah,
I'm
touch
sorry.
another one, like I said, till we've got a mark on all of them.
Okay, that is Tari again. He's probably about, he may be 3 there. And that, he's probably about 6 or 7 months. He may be 9 months there. And Tari here, I believe he's about 7 here. He's
And
probably-
throughout all of these ages, were you there, you know,
Yes.
following along in his life?
Yes, I was. He was probably 3. And then go back, he wanted to play football, but his dad wouldn't let him.
Right. I was just saying, so did he go to Beach High School?
Yes, he did.
And
And at Beach High School, when he was in grade school, his principal told him she knew he was going to be a chef one day. Even when he was in grade school, they noticed he loved to cook. And then that's his graduation. I was there for his graduation from high school. And now that is Tari being him, his, his beautiful self. That's the oldest picture of him.
would it be fair to say that Torian Sonderland was a happy person?
Tari was a very happy person, but he was a quiet person. He was, his dad is big, so he's big. But he was a gentle, he loved animals, he loved dogs. He left behind a dog, Rocco.
Did he love his work?
He loved his work. He enjoyed his work. He just loved him, yes. And Tari, like I say, when he left home, he struggled a while because as a teenager, you get your bearings, figure out what you want to do. And he finally said, well, I'm going to go ahead and go for being a chef since that's what I enjoy. And he had just settled into doing that. And we were very happy for him.
Was he looking forward to
Yeah,
a life and a career?
yeah, because he wanted to possibly one day open up his own restaurant and run that. So, and we knew it would be successful because he could cook good.
Is there anything else you would like to tell about Torian and how his loss and not seeing that smile?
Tari not only had a beautiful smile, but Tari had a laughter that when you heard it, you couldn't help but laugh with him. He was such, and he was such an outstanding person. He was warm. He loved people. He always, if you needed something, he was there for you. I have to tell about the time we were on vacation and we rented a boat. We was in Arkansas. We was on the Mississippi River and we rented a boat and we had a raft on the end of it. We were pulling it and they were riding back there. My son had to be the first one on it. He don't swim very well, but we thought he was going to be secure. We put him on it. My sister was driving, she took off. My son fell off. All we could see was his eyes because he was so frantic because he was in the Mississippi River. I looked at Tari. I said, save him. Tari just dove in. Tari could swim like a dolphin. He was the best swimmer. He swam to Tari, Bryson. By the time we got the boat turned around, he had already got him. We got him back on the boat, and everybody got settled and regrouped, and we just continued our vacation. But Tari could swim better than anybody I had known. And there was nothing for him to dive in that water to go and save my son, because if he hadn't did that, he may not have been here. He was always, if you needed him, he was there for you. He was dating a young lady, and he had asked his mom, he said, how do you break off with somebody without hurting them? He didn't want to hurt her because he knew she wasn't the person for him, but he couldn't break off from her because he said, I don't want to hurt her.
Has his loss, his death, his murder affected many, many people?
Many, many people. My mother is 90 years old, and she, to this day, she couldn't come to the trial. She was here in town, but she said, I will watch it on TV. And she got to the point she couldn't even watch it on TV. And they left and went back home Wednesday. But it has affected, and my brothers, because they mentored Tari. They always would try to be the uncle for him whenever he needed them. Because when Tari needed anything, he would call, I have to say this, Bryson would call me, my son, Mom, your other son needs to talk to you. He's going through something. I said, what's going on? Just talk to your other son.
And
So I would call and talk to Tari, and we get things straightened out, and he feel better, and we felt better, and we go on. We were just a close-knit family. We are a close-knit family.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you.
Hold on just a second.
No questions, Joe.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
All right, next one.
Bryson Murray.
So if you would raise your right hand and be sworn, please.
You solemnly swear to affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Can we pull the television screen back out, please, just for a second?
See, just leave it out there.
Sir, could you tell us your name and spell both your first and last name for us?
Okay, my name is William Bryson Murray, WILLIAMBRYSONMURRAY.
Mr. Murray, do you live here in Nashville?
Yeah, I live here in Nashville. I live in 1928 Brookshire Port. I live down the street from the Waffle House. I was just trying to put it in perspective.
Okay, well, I was going to get there without you necessarily having to tell your street address.
Yeah, oh well.
But in any event, putting that into perspective of knowing where this occurred, correct?
Yes.
And do you know the young man in that picture?
Young man, that's my cousin. That's my brother. That was my spades partner. That was my partner in Fortnite. Shoot, that was my partner in Destiny. Any video game, that was my Marvel. Go to the movie theater, see Marvel movies with. That was everything. Anything he needed to do or we needed to do together, that's what we did.
I believe we know from your mother's testimony that you and Torian cousins, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you said brothers. Is that how you felt though about it?
Yeah, that's how I felt. I mean, he kind of followed us at the time. I know my mom said he had lived with us in Springfield, Illinois when I was in high school. He also, when I moved down here to Nashville, we lived together at his mom's older house, so a duplex. Me and Torian lived together there. At the time of this incident, I had a house at the time. He lived with me at the time. This incident, that was the main reason he was at the Waffle House he was at, because it was the Waffle House closer to my house. It was easier for him to get to work. So, I mean, that was the main reason he was even in the position he was.
And with respect to that particular Waffle House, how long had he been working there?
He had just transferred to that Waffle House, so I think he might have only been there maybe 3 months or so. Because I remember just taking him to Waffle House. I took him to work pretty much every night. I would have my son with me a lot of the times when we took him to work because it was such a short drive. Like, my son would sit on my lap and kind of steer the wheel. This is him at like 3, and I was like, yeah, we got to take Torian to work. So that was our little fun thing we did together, taking him to work. I was like, yeah, I'll let you steer the wheel while we take him down the street to work. And I remember at times when he was at the other Waffle Houses, like he's worked at the one on Trinity Lane. He's worked on the ones on Murfreesboro further down the street by 440. He's worked at one other one, I believe. And out of all the Waffle Houses, when they built that new one, all we could think of, it's in a better location. And I remember talking to him about all that time, it's in a better location. You're going to probably get more money at this location. It's safer. It's closer to me than some of these other ones. And to see all this happen.
Was Torian older or younger than you? About what age difference?
Torian was a year and 1 month older than me.
Okay. So essentially, y'all grew up together.
Yeah, we grew up together. And like I said, he had lived with me there. I forgot to mention that he did also, even when I was in college at Western Illinois, he would be down there a lot and stay with me where I was at there. So a lot of places I've been, he kind of followed behind me. I know I always tried to talk him into doing different things, especially with school. I know I went to Western Illinois, transferred to Tennessee State. We also always talked about school. I know when I first got down here and was going to Tennessee State, he was in a partnership with electrical partnership, internship thing. And I remember how much, like, both of us having to go to school and do homework, how that process was and how happy he was to be doing that. And then later on, him trying to go a different direction just because he's getting older, realizing kind of what he wants to do more in life, and thinking about cooking more and what steps he wants to do to kind of pursue that, and me trying to help him as best I could and try to help him, direct him a little bit.
And so he found his passion in life, from what it sounds like.
Yeah, me and Torian, I mean, since we were maybe 10 or 8, we've been on the grill cooking. Maybe even younger than that. Maybe my aunt or my mom could remember us cooking something, but we've always been on the grill, seasoning food, cleaning food, getting it ready for everybody else. So we always took pride in that. We'll be up early before everybody else. As we got older, we're up at 3 a.m. with uncles, getting everything prepared, buying all the food, going to Sam's, going wherever we need to do, talking about it, preparing for later where maybe we're going to play cards, getting ready, we're going to do this, talking to family, saying what's going to happen later, just having, we always had a good time. And I'm sure that even some of the people that were there, I'm hoping that at least he made them laugh, Because I know that's something he would do, regardless of who you were. He's going to do something silly to make you laugh. So I hope that happens.
You mentioned your son, who was about
Yeah, my son
3
was,
at the time.
Yeah, he was 3 or 4. I know I worked a lot, and my son might have actually seen him more during that period of time. And because Tarian worked nights, so he worked maybe from 11 to 6 or 10 to 6. And so during the day, he was up when my son wasn't in school. My son was never in daycare. So his mom would be home and Tarian would be home. Tarian would be up playing with him all the time, throwing him around, just playing games with him. My son is very energetic and always doing stuff. So there's no telling what all the trouble they might have got in together while I was at work. But I know they had a good time.
And the reason I ask that is, did there come a time when you had to tell your son that Torian wasn't coming back?
Yeah, that was just a hard time, just because it was hard for me because the whole thing, I know I'm bad about it. I don't really talk about my cousin a lot. So my son came up to me just asking where he was, and then having to look like my son and and not being able to explain it. I don't think I know I wasn't able to explain it at all. Pretty sure his grandma, somebody else had to explain it, because at the time, I mean, probably even to this day, there's always going to be a part of me that's kind of tears up anytime I talk about Tarin or see something about him or something that reminds me of him. Because, like I said, he lived with me. So to this day, my son's room is still kind of Tarin's room. And it's just parts of the time. So a lot of times that correlation with my son and Tarin, that's just always going to be there.
And so is this a daily, weekly, monthly? Has his loss?
Oh, his loss is always going to be a daily thing for me, just because he lived with me. This wasn't the type of family thing where I saw him once every 2 years. He was really my brother. There's not been a time ever when I've told him no to something that he's asked of me, or I've had to question it. Like, if that day, just to put in perspective.
I think we're going on the same line, because I was going to ask, do you recall the last time you saw Torian?
Yeah, the last time I saw him, we had went to, I work at a job. I'm thankful enough to work at a job where the company I work at owns a suite. So that night we had went to the comedy jam with, I think it was George Lopez, Eddie Griffin, and some other comedians. So we were there probably from 7 till 10:30 or so. So we got to enjoy that in the suite with open bar, everything.
Is that Bridgestone Arena?
Yeah, that's in Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. So we went downtown, enjoyed that, laughed, had fun. On the way, leaving Bridgestone with all the traffic, we're talking about maybe we shouldn't even go to work. We've had a good time. And I just remember me saying, oh, well, you got to put work first. And still taking them in after we got to my house. I think he took a shower and went to work. I know that day he got to work late because we had a good time, and he had already told him that we had plans to go to that concert where he was going to help out. So that's how that night went. And then I remember that day, just to put it in perspective how we were, that morning, I'm waking up, I'm getting the game on, because usually when he came home, that's the first thing we might do before he went to sleep was play the game or play Fortnite. Since that day, I haven't played Fortnite since the incident. Haven't turned it on, haven't tried it, haven't played Destiny. I know a lot of people might not know about Destiny, but you need a lot of teamwork, teams of like 6 to do little raids at the end. Haven't did any of that since the incident, because it's just a piece of me that kind of got lost with that. And I remember waking up at 5 a.m. or 5:30 probably, getting the game ready. By the time he get off, we gonna be ready. And seeing at my phone and seeing I got 40 missed calls and 30 texts from people that know me saying, there's something at Waffle House, you need to check it out. Is your cousin okay? I remember calling my cousin about 30 times, thinking, oh, maybe he just dropped his phone or his phone dead. Then I turn on the news and I start seeing it and processing all the stuff that's happening. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, shoot, okay, maybe he got shot with like a little pistol or something. He fine, he big dude. Shoot, I just need to find where he at. So I'm processing that, but at the same time, I'm seeing the news and they're slowly getting updates and seeing what type of gun was used. And then in my head, I'm going a whole different direction. And then I end up heading to Waffle House that day, because it's not far. It's Waffle House from my house is 2 turns away. So I remember going down to Waffle House that day and going through, because I didn't care at the time, I'm going through the yellow tape, and then I see a body on the ground still. And then someone, I think one of the girls from Waffle House came up to me saying he didn't make it.
So you were there?
Yeah, so I went up there, I was there. And then I just remember that day, I remember calling my aunt, I know after that happened, and trying to tell her that I know y'all trying to look for him at all these hospitals, but his body's still on the ground.
So were you the person who had to break the news to his?
Well, I broke it. This is before the news that reported the names and all this stuff is happening. So my aunt's it was still all in denial at that point. It's like you couldn't process. My aunt couldn't process that at the time. She's like, yeah, we're gonna call a few more hospitals. We're gonna find him. He's gonna be okay. So it was something that nobody was ready to process. And I know for my aunt, like, later on, once you get the call that's actually saying that Tarian is the person officially, I mean, a part of my aunt just died. And, I mean, that hurt so much because of my family. My mom, she didn't say, but she's one of 9. At the time, we lost one person because of medical reasons. We didn't lose anybody in our life, in our family. And my grandma's 90. She hasn't lost any of her kids, any of her kids' kids. So for my aunt to be like the first one to lose a child to something like this that was out of nowhere and nothing they did, like, there's so much stuff that's happening that maybe people are doing the wrong thing, but when somebody was just going to work and just trying to do what was right at the time, and then they be taken from you, it's just something that it's not like a pill anybody should be able to swallow. And that's what happened. And then I know for me, I know I have a child. I have one child. And at the time, Tarian didn't have any children. So I know my aunt's looking at me like, you need more children. I gotta replace this. So I know that's always gonna be a void in my aunt's heart. And at the same time, to this day, anything my aunt asks me to do, I don't say no to my aunt either. If it's something she needs once, I'm gonna try to make it happen, figure it out, because I know how she feels about Tarian, and that's something I could just be there for her, but I can't replace it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Hold on.
No, you thank you, Mr. Murray. You may stop there.
State calls Chandelle.
Good morning, ma'am. Would you please state your name and spell it?
I'm sorry. Chandelle Brooks, SHAUNDELLE, Brooks, BROOKS.
Miss Brooks, do you have a son by the name of Aquila De Silva?
I do.
When was he born?
November 17th, 1994.
And how many children do you have?
4.
Where did he fit in the age of your children?
He was the second child.
Ms. Brooks, I understand that you wrote something in order to assist you with your testimony today. Yeah. Ms. Brooks, I'm going to show you a picture. If you, do you recognize this person?
I do.
And who was that?
My son.
How old was Aquila about the time that he took this picture?
He was 17.
Is this a prom picture?
It is.
I was mentioning, Ms. Brooks, that you said that you wrote something that might assist you with your testimony here today.
Yeah.
Okay, and I've discussed this, Your Honor, with defense counsel. So, with the court's permission, I'd ask Ms. Brooks to read it, and there is going to be a portion where I ask you to stop, but just read until I tell you to stop.
Sorry. Every morning, I wake up with the same thought. My baby is gone. Every morning, before I even get out of my bed, I relive that night in my head. Every morning, I feel that unbearable sense of loss and sorrow. I miss him. The pain is so great that some days I'm not sure I can even open my eyes. I didn't lose my son Aquila. He was taken from me, taken from my family, ripped from us. This leaves left our family incomplete, forever broken. My son left our home on April 22nd, 2018. He left a video game paused in his room. He left a music project up on his computer. He left a safe and left our lives forever. That night, our nightmare began. When I woke up around 3:40 a.m., I noticed my sons were still out. I texted them like I normally do to check in and make sure they were okay. Minutes later, my oldest son of 8, called me and said they were at the Waffle House and someone was shooting. I immediately asked where is Akila, because I knew I was talking to a baby and he was okay. When he responded that he didn't know, my heart dropped. I then drove to Waffle House, where the scene was so chaotic. It was it was almost blinded by the sirens and flashing lights. My heart was just pounding in my chest. My thoughts raced through my head. I remember thinking, what's happening? Where are my sons? Where is Akila? I stopped, I got out the car, and I'm thinking, the police stopped me at the entrance, and he said, ma'am, you couldn't go back there. I said, but my sons are back there. In the ambulance drove up beside me, and the doors just opened. It just opened, and then someone was laying in there. And I recognized the shoes, that it was Akila's. And I said, oh God. I said, Akila, Akila. I called his name 3 times and he didn't answer. I knew something was wrong. Oh my God. I saw Keyless through the shoes through the door of the ambulance and cried out to him. I was just begging God that he would respond, that he would respond. I prayed that someone would tell me that my baby was okay. But they said he didn't make it. Looking at my baby's cold, motionless body in a box was devastating, crushing. The pain I felt at that moment was indescribable. It is something I thought I would never experience in my life. It's something a mother, a parent, a family should never have to experience. It's so surreal. It's the stuff you see in a nightmare. No parent should ever have to bury their child. But I did. And now I live that nightmare every day. My son was gifted. He was a gifted artist, a brilliant student. He wrote and produced songs, recorded and edited videos. He built his own computer from scratch to work on his music. He was a genius to me. My little genius. He was a computer and audio engineer. He had great purpose. He had big goals and dreams. He was a beacon of hope. Achilles stood out in everything he did. He weighed 10 pounds, almost 10 pounds when he was born. He did everything quickly. He walked quickly. He had a mission. He had a mission and a vision. We realized early that Achilles' brain worked 10 times faster than ours. He mastered every electronic device that he owned before he was even 2 years old. And it didn't stop there as he got older. He was a perfectionist and followed through on every task he set out to complete. Telling him no, or that he couldn't do something, only made him more determined to work harder, to learn and to master it. He was quiet, but in his mind, he was always working. Achille was loved by people whose lives he touched. He was not perfect, but he came very close. I always told him that he was so special, that he was a prophet, that he made a song of it. He was one of a kind. I knew he would have done great things. He was already doing that. He always told me, Mom, I would take care of you. We're not worried about finances. When I was worried and stressed, he would comfort me. Because even as a child, he was always thinking about others. He was always kind and was always spreading love. My son's music was always positive and encouraging. Like many young people in America, he was upset by gun violence in our country and used his music to urge people to turn away from it. One of the lines from his song, Prophet, it went like this: forget about making a hashtag. Just throw all the guns in a trash bag. Achille was part of the lockdown generation in this country, conditioned by lockdown drills, never-ending news stories of gun violence and mass shootings. It impacted him. He spoke about gun violence and preventing gun violence in his music.
Ms. Brooks, would you skip this next sentence and go to the one after which says, my son Aquila?
Before that?
Just skip the next sentence and please start at, my son Aquila was a beautiful soul.
My son Aquila was a beautiful soul who perfected how to be a son. He was a great brother to his siblings. He loved his family, but most of all, Aquila wanted to live. He wanted to create positive change in this world. He showed compassion, not anger. He spread love, not hate. He was just an old soul. He was just a good person who deserved to live. We didn't lose him. He was taken from us. My sweet baby, my angel, my son was robbed of his life. And from those that were privileged to have known him, privileged to have loved him, were robbed of his life, of his light, of the promise of what he would have become, and all the good he would have done. We have been robbed of Christmas mornings, birthdays, celebrations. miss talking to him. I miss our 2-hour phone calls. We live with that loss every day. We live with that pain every day. Since my son's murder, I have learned a lot about gun violence in our country, in our state. I have dedicated my life to preventing gun violence. I want to do whatever I can to prevent another mother from having to bury her children, from having to wake up every day with a broken heart. To know that she will grow old without her beloved child. It is impossible to know the pain of your child being murdered unless you experienced it yourself. That pain extends beyond just the loss of life. It impacts everyone it attached to. My son Abedi suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder after what he saw and experienced. Abedi watches Akila bled, held him as he screamed in pain, and ultimately watched him die. The last words Abedi heard from Akila is, "I can't breathe." Abedi consistently played those words back in his head over and over again. He will carry that trauma with him for the rest of his life. Senseless gun violence took my son, my sweet Akila, away from me, from his siblings, his family, his friends. Our lives will never be the same. I have become a survivor with no choice of my own. My family has joined this informal and sadly growing club of gun violence survivors. Family members whose loved ones were taken by bullets. The members of this club are the only ones who truly understand the never-ending pain, the unbearable loss, the trauma that we relive over and over. It is a club with far too many members. While I am grateful for it, it is still a club no family wants to join. Akila was robbed of his dreams, his goals, his opportunity to have children and a family. We were robbed of Akila. My sweet, innocent baby was gunned down. The pain is sometimes so intense. The pain is intense today as it was the night of April 22nd. That fear, that trauma, and horror I feel is all consuming. But instead of concentrating on that, I choose to fight. No mother should ever have to bury her child. No family should ever have to relive, should never have to live like this.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take about a 10-minute recess.
No, we don't have a motion.
About a 10-minute recess. Members of the jury, same rules apply. You can't not discuss anything that transpired in this courtroom this morning. Again, just keep your thoughts to yourself, and we'll get you back in here shortly. We'll be back about 10, 15 minutes, as soon as everybody has a chance to